Welcome back. The Democrat Party's approval rating hitting record lows in two national polls this month. CNN finds only 29% of Americans have a favorable view of the Democrats, while NBC polls show that number even lower, 27%. But former Democrat vice presidential nominee Tim Walz seems to not have learned anything about November's loss. Here's his explanation on why America chose Trump.
We let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is. We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them.
Wow, they're going to execute him. Joining me now is former advisor to the Clintons, Stagwell chairman and CEO, and the Harris Poll chairman, Mark Penn. Mark, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. And you've been doing your own polling, very, very good polling. Your thoughts on what's going on with the Democrats right now?
Well, the Democrats have fallen off a cliff. I haven't seen anything like this, although you can go back to 1972 when they got one state, or 1984 when they got one state. Look, the Democratic policies really put the Democrats in a hole. And I think in retrospect, they're looking at the Biden presidency and saying, I don't know how he was president. He was weak internationally. He caused inflation at home. He left the border open. He didn't do anything about crime. I think that in retrospect, people are looking back and they're wondering, how on earth did they even vote Democratic? And that is a really big problem for this party.
Well, not the leadership. You heard what Tim Walz just said. We're going to put these policies in. We're going to stand by our policies. And then he claims that the Republicans set the tone for immigration. No, they didn't. Joe Biden had a wide open border. The Democrats set the tone for illegal migrants coming into the country, not the Republicans. They fought about it all the way.
Yeah, I really don't know what planet he's on. Frankly, he's not really likely to be Democratic leadership unless the Democratic Party drives itself down to a single state again. I think on border politics and border policy, that is where President Trump is getting his highest ratings, near 60%, high 50s. He closed the border rapidly. People see all the things that the Biden administration was saying about the border to have been nonsense, frankly.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. You walk around the streets of New York and suddenly it feels better, right? With all of those people now on planes to El Salvador and Venezuela. But look, it's not just Tim Walz, right? A new CNN poll reveals that Democrats think New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez best reflects the core values of the party. 10% of Democrats support AOC. Former VP Kamala Harris is coming in a close second. 8% of those polled named Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders as the leader. These are all the leading leftists of the party. These are all those, very aggressive policies. Some Democrats are even pushing AOC to primary New York Senator Chuck Schumer after he voted for the bill which prevented a government shutdown, Mark.
Look, I think Schumer did the right thing in standing up against a government shutdown. It would have been a catastrophe for the Democrats. And look at those numbers, 10%. Generally, when there are party leaders, that's acknowledged by 30, 40, or even 50%. So I think AOC and Bernie Sanders are a long way from being the real leaders of the party. I don't think you could say there is a leader of the Democratic Party at this point. I don't think there will be one until the presidential primaries. And at that point, the party is either going to pick another McGovern or they're going to pick a Bill Clinton. And that's going to make a big difference in where this party goes and what it stands for.
I want to get your take on the signal catastrophe or signal, upset at the White House. President Trump called out the CEO of NPR, Catherine Mayer, for being a sitting board member of Signal and the messaging app, Mark. You posted this on X. Seriously, you think that Jeffrey Goldberg got added to a high-level national security conversation by chance? The chance that this was done by an operative looking to embarrass the administration is about 90%. The chance someone added him because they were looking for another Jeffrey is about 10%. Tell us more, Mark. What are you saying here?
Well, look, I was speculating there that most of these things really just don't happen by chance. Wow, how did Jeffrey Goldberg wind up on that? I don't think it's been clarified. I think Trump has said it was a staff member. I think Waltz took responsibility. We still don't know exactly how this happened. I think that I was expressing suspicion based on my experience and what we all said, like about the Wuhan virus. It obviously was the lab. So we'll see exactly how this happened. Boy, I wish Jeffrey Goldberg had been a stand-up journalist and said, you know what, these are confidential, high-level matters. I have no business being on this. I'm just going to take myself off. And that would have been the appropriate thing for journalists to do. Not, oh, great, I got access to confidential information I shouldn't have. And look, the people in it should have been using some other app. I think that it's time that government reformed its communication system so that it has something that's secure and easy to use as Signal. But this, you know, nobody was right here.
Yeah, I mean, there is this Alex Wong at the center of this Signagate scandal, if you want to call it that. He is the Chinese Deputy National Security Advisor, appointed by President Trump. He's at the center of this. He's married to U.S. Attorney Candace Chu Wong, a Chinese woman who was one of the key attorneys involved in prosecuting January 6ers. That's interesting. Alex Wong and his wife, these Chinese nationals who are working, Chinese deputy national security. I mean, I assume they're American citizens, obviously. But he was appointed by the president to serve as the assistant to the president and the principal deputy national security advisor. Do you know if he put the people in the chat?
No, I certainly don't know. And look, I think there has to be an investigation. All they're saying is, in my experience, that, you know, chance rarely happens to be the case that someone like Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a national, security defense reporter from the Atlantic, gets accidentally placed on. It could have happened by accident. I really want to get to the facts here, and I hope there is an investigation. Whether or not it was somebody who did something deliberate, I'm sure the actual people in the call really certainly meant no harm.
Mm-hmm. What do you think should happen here?
Look, I think investigate it. I don't think anybody meant any harm, and let's move on. And okay. I think Trump officials will learn, hey, this is not how you have these high-level conversations, and won't do it again. Let's close this chapter. It's not really relevant to the foreign policy that was executed.
That's right.
That President Trump ordered. And
that's the bottom line. The operation went very successfully. Mark, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you, sir.